Welcome to Shrimperscast with me, Paul Hill.
And me, Steve Mansfield. On today's show,
Tumbleweed blows across Roots Hall pitch as a break in play turns attention to the takeover.
we chat through the off-the-field news as the consortium looks to add to its squad.
Steve catches up with football finance journalist and lifelong shrimper Matt Slater of The Athletic.
And we look ahead to Altrincham away this Saturday. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Shrimperscast. I'm sat here with Paul Hill. How you doing, Paul?
Oh, very well, thank you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you, mate. All good. How was your Egyptian soiree? You've just got back from holiday. You're looking, I'd say tanned.
Well, considering that I get a tan every time I open the oven, I think I've got away quite lightly in Egypt. It was a great trip. It was a well-needed break there, and my three youngest kids hadn't been on a plane before, so it was dead exciting for them. But,
amazing.
What a great, beautiful place to go. I tried to do a bit of football scouting out there, see if I could find the next Mo Salah, but alas, it wasn't to be. But it was a great break, great people, great city, and it was just nice to get that winter break.
Good stuff. You didn't find the next Egyptian striker and bring him back in your luggage then for Southend?
I was trying. There was a couple out there. I did find a couple of Harry Cardwell lookalikes. I thought, yeah, you look good, but it turns out they're from Bradford, so I left them alone.
Amazing. So, bit of a strange time for Southend. After the relentless sort of summer going into the start of autumn, it's all sort of died a little bit, and there's not been a match for a little while. We've reviewed the previous two games where Southend picked up 4 points from 6 available, and there's not been a game since then. So we've got a bit of a lull in proceedings. I think, looking at the list of injuries and the squad size, probably a good thing. And Kevin said as well, hasn't he, that he feels that the break's actually, a blessing in disguise for them. So a bit of rest for the players. And I think we're going into a period where they play a game a week rather than two for a short while. So that will be good for the players. So, yeah, a bit of a strange episode. Now, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with the takeover. We've got a chap coming on the show today with a bit more financial acumen than any of us have got on the usual panel. A chap called Matt Slater, who writes about football and finance for The Athletic and covers things like the Man United takeover, the Everton takeover. He's been across lots and lots of stories. So he's also remarkably a Southend fan. So he's really well placed to kind of talk us through what's going on, hopefully. But before we get to that, Paul, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So what do we know?
Well, I went away for a week. As you said, the schedule was absolutely jam-packed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then and attention now turns to what's going on off the field. I've come back. I tried to catch up, but it's so complicated. You're seeing Section 106's land transaction, dilution of shares and all of this stuff. And, I'm not, well-versed in football finance, and I know a lot of people aren't. And luckily, we do know people from the Trust and Liam and Paul Fitzgerald, and they're trying to keep their ear to the ground and keep us informed. But it's very complicated. There is a lot going on, and it needs to be broken down. So I'm really happy Matt is coming on, who could probably, help shed some light on what's going on, because it's getting a bit nervy, isn't it? We thought, the new owner's come in, Justin's walked in, he's walking around town like he owns the place. And now it's like, well, we get to see extra people being invited to the consortium.
Yeah, so what's that? We've seen a headline, potentially Teddy Taylor's son, George, is being considered to be added. It just doesn't seem very concrete, any of it, does it?
No, it doesn't fill me with confidence either. I mean, what does George Taylor bring to the table?
Yeah.
That hasn't been disclosed yet. I mean, there was a good piece in the Echo put out about every single person of the consortium and what they've done, the Lifelong Blues fans. And that. So I'd like to know a little bit more about George and what he can bring to the table. Is he been brought in to kind of get us over the line? I don't know. But again, I guess everything will come out at some point. But while we've got this break in games, it'd be nice if the consortium or anybody else with any further information from either side just to let us know what's going on. Because at the minute, all I know is that the 9th, Thursday, we've got a council meeting coming in where they're going to be talking about land transactions and all of this stuff. But I think we need to get our man on the inside, Mr. Matt Denton, after this meeting, don't we?
Yeah. So the council are meeting on Thursday to, we believe, discuss the sort of development side of the deal, which is the big development that Ron has always wanted to do over at Fossett's Farm. And we still think that the structure of the deal is that because Ron no longer has to build a stadium, the council are hopefully going to use a mechanism that's available to them, which is there to kind of ensure that developers support the development of the infrastructure alongside their actual kind of property development. So usually it's for things like putting money into schools, roads, the sort of infrastructure that's needed when all of a sudden you've got 1,500 extra homes in an area. So we think the council are using that mechanism to force Ron to pay a total of 20 million back to the consortium to fund the development of Roots Hall, which is what the consortium have said. They're on the record. They want to stay at Roots Hall and they want to develop it. And that's obviously going to cost a fair bit of money. So we do believe that that's what's going to be discussed on Thursday. However, as you say, Paul, we're kind of a little bit in the dark really on all of this. So you've reached out to Matt Dent, the councillor, who's been on the show before, haven't you? And are we hoping to get him on?
Yeah, I think we'll get him on after the meeting. Hopefully he'll give us a little summary about what has been going on. And like you just said, with the houses being moved away now from Roots Hall, I think there's going to be over 1,600 homes being built on Fossett's now.
Yeah.
So you're quite right when you say the infrastructure does need improving. They might need to put a school on there or a doctors. Things will need improving. So I think they'll be sorting out the granularities of that. But we definitely need some clarity, and I think Matt will be ideal to come on and keep us all informed.
Good stuff. Well, back onto the field, we're going to preview the Altrincham game, which is coming up this weekend shortly. But going into that, we do know that there's a fair few injuries for the Blues. I think John Gowans and his team are going to be busy kind of on the treatment table. Some good news. David Martin is back available in goal, which is good. Colin's still out.
Yep.
We know that Dimitru went down with a bad hamstring injury against Solihull Moors, and he's still mooted to be out for a few weeks from now. So it's clearly a bad one. I think they've checked it, scanned it, and they've confirmed that he's got a tear, which is what they suspected. So can be a bit of a long one. And then you've got a couple of players out. Powell long term with his knee injury, and Lomas, who's not played at all this season. So kind of threadbare on the squad front. But I think going back to that point, and Kevin Mayer's made the point that, given the depth of the squad, or lack of depth in the squad because of the transfer embargo, and given the list of injuries, it couldn't have really come at a better time for this kind of lull in proceedings, could it?
No, absolutely. And they needed that break, not only for the physical well-being, but the mental well-being as well. I mean, the games were thick and fast, weren't they?
Yeah.
It is going to be taxing.
Yeah.
And I thought Hayes did a really good job in goal. I thought he was brilliant. Our loanee from Ipswich Town, I saw a report that the Ipswich Town coaching staff are very happy with his development. So I don't know if he's stayed with us or we can extend that loan because he looks pretty decent. And, Carnu. Wow.
Yes.
What a player that is.
Yes.
He is indeed. Very well, funny, like I said, I was at an event and he's very highly thought of there. I know we've only got him to January, but it'd be great if we can keep hold of him. Or, even just getting this consortium sorted out so we can lift this embargo in time for January. We won't be them bare bones FC anymore. And if I was a young upcoming footballer, looking at a club that's just been taken over, as long as everything goes to plan, I would be looking at that going, do you know what? I'm looking at Carnu, I'm looking at Hayes, I'm looking at the young players there, and I'll be thinking that would be a club I'd like to go to develop my career.
Yeah, everyone's getting a chance, aren't they? All the young players are getting a chance. It's clearly part of the philosophy there. So absolutely should be an exciting prospect to join Southend for any team. So let's hope that embargo gets lifted before too long and Southend can start making signings. Right, as we said, we are now going to be joined by Matt Slater from The Athletic. So let's have a listen to what he's got to say. Big thank you to Matt Slater, who is joining me now on Shrimperscast. Matt, welcome to Shrimperscast.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
I'm all good, thanks. And how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good. For our listeners who aren't familiar with yourself and your work, can you please introduce yourself?
I work for the Athletic. I used to work for the BBC and the Press Association before that. I cover the business of sport for the Athletic, and I've only really done sort of newsy stuff in my career. I've not always done football, but it's pretty much only football these days. When it's the politics of football, it's the money, it's rows, it's clubs in crisis, it's takeovers, that sort of thing. And I've kind of been doing that for about 15 years, I guess. That sort of stuff. I've been a journo for about 25. So that's what I do. It's kind of niche. I don't do transfers. I don't do match reports, and so I do money and rows and problems.
So you've got a lot of experience, really. There's been a fair few high-profile stories over those 25 years for you to cover. And you're a Southend fan, is that right?
Yeah. What an amazing case study, for my work. I am a Southend fan. Yeah,
brilliant. So that's kind of why we reached out, knowing that you've got the sort of expertise. Since the announcement of the consortium's agreement to take over the club, at that point there was a huge amount of excitement amongst the fan base. Kind of felt like finally Ron Martin might be going and some new blood might be coming in with some fresh ideas and some money. Since then, I think certainly amongst certain fans, there's a bit of nervousness. There's been a delay announced. Initially, we were looking at the 1st of November. That was pushed back. There's now an extraordinary general meeting on the 17th. There's a meeting at the council this Thursday. There seems to be a lot of moving parts and a lot of complexities to this deal. With your experience and your knowledge of takeovers and things, what are your general thoughts on the structure of this takeover at Southend?
Well, there's a lot in there. So look, every takeover is a little bit different. Every club's a little bit different. There aren't, and people don't sell clubs unless there's problems, usually. There are a few exceptions, but honestly, they are the exceptions. So most clubs are kind of sold in a state of distress, or because the owner's circumstances have changed. So there's never, they're not great. They're not smooth. They're not easy. And nearly all football clubs are loss making. So you're talking about the sale of a kind of distressed asset that's leaking money. So that's a very sort of general point. So they don't go smoothly, right? This is not like buying a house, perfect chain. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's quite ordinary for things to change, things to drag on a bit, something to come up in due diligence, someone to sort of change their mind. So that stuff is fairly standard. But then there's some very specific things about Southend, right? So if we, in no particular order, Southend has been a very complicated property play for, and this is where some of your older listeners will go, oh, no, I remember in the 80s and 90s. Let's just say, for argument's sake, 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
And building stuff adds complexity, particularly, I would argue, in southeast England, particularly if you're talking about housing. And of course, the plan has changed, and his previous ideas, he couldn't get them off the ground. He couldn't do them quick enough. He's not a brilliant property developer, I'm afraid to say. That's been one of the sort of tragedies of being connected to him. But anyway, he finally landed on a reasonable idea, an idea that is good for the area, that had the buy-in of the council, which is crucial. But it's still quite tricky to do, building that many houses on 2 sites initially. So there's that. He's also been propping the club up. I wouldn't say in a kind of completely unusual way, because I can think of some other examples of clubs where the owner and his club have become so strangely entwined. It is on the unusual end of the spectrum, though, just how opaque and weird his corporate structure is. So you've got to untangle all that. You've got to untangle sort of 20, 25 years worth of failed property adventures with the complexity of the one he's landed on, building loads of houses, loss-making club, crashing through a couple of divisions quickly. And it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. I think also the other thing about Ron Martin, and this again is quite common, he's getting to the ends of his time as a businessman, put it that way.
Yeah.
And then you have the next generation and what they want to do. I see this all the time. Do the children, do the grandchildren sometimes, are they as emotionally committed to the football club as the father, the grandfather? So that can be an issue, and how you sort of negotiate that sort of generational, what are we doing here? This is now a family business, a family concern. So I think if you throw all that in the mix, and then we are talking about a club that from the minute you take over, you are paying bills. They are loss-making.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be loss-making for a couple of years, at best. So you have some management to do on your side as well. Most people now, this is becoming quite common, build a group, build a syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you've got a sovereign wealth fund or you're backed by a private equity fund, but then you'll have the same issues with the private equity fund as well, because they'll have an investment committee and shareholders, etc., and investors. But unless you've got a sovereign wealth fund, or you are just lucky and an absolute billionaire wants you,
mm-hmm.
you're dealing with stuff at your end as well. So you've got all the complexity on the other side, 20, 25 years worth of corporate nonsense to unpick. This relationship with this the council is absolutely crucial. There's debt there, there's bills, there's ongoing bills. There's a hell of a lot to do. So that's a long rambling answer without really getting into any specifics as to why it got pushed back a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But the general picture is confusion. It's going to take time. And I've been getting messages from Southend fans for a long time, but let's say a load this year. And my sort of standard response has nearly always been I totally get it. Just calm down. All right. Just breathe. There've been times when I've been like, no, I actually now am a little bit worried because
you're joining them in the panic as well.
No, because the deal had collapsed, or I was very concerned about how erratic Ron was and how unreasonable and how irrational he was at times, and just his expectations of what he thought the thing was worth. But from the moment I think he kind of got boxed in and realised that Fossett's Farm was a fantasy as a stadium, and was just suddenly got realistic about what he was actually selling. Loss-making National League club with a dilapidated stadium. I'm not good enough at this to pull off 2 building sites. The minute that kind of simplified, no, I'm going to sell this football club for what it's kind of worth, £1.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation around what I get back from what I've put in. There'll be a negotiation to be had there. And maybe we can have a conversation as well about some upside. If X, Y, and Z happens in a reasonable amount of time, maybe I get a little bit back. Maybe. So suddenly it just got, what he was selling got simpler.
Right.
And at that point I sort of calmed down a bit, because I was like, okay, what he's asking for Southend United makes sense when you benchmark it against other clubs. What he was asking before was ludicrous and was only made sense if Fossett's Farm was actually built and you could touch it, or it was nearly built.
Yeah.
So if you compare it, let's say, to Everton, or someone else that is selling a distressed football asset that has some incredible infrastructure, Reading's a really good example. But even Reading's really hard to value at the moment, because they're very probably going to be a League Two club. They may well have top end of Championship stadium and training ground, but they are going to be a League Two club next year, and they're going to be banned from buying players for 3 windows. So you have a really complicated valuation exercise there. But at least you can go visit the training ground and go, wow, this is kind of Premier League standard.
Yeah.
At least you go see a game. You can sit at the stadium and go, wow, that's pretty good.
This stadium exists.
Yeah.
It's a tangible asset. Yeah.
Ron was selling a picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I was getting concerned in the summer, because all I was hearing was, he wants this, he wants this. So I was like, what's he selling? What does he think he's selling?
Yeah.
And he's also selling, as part of the problem then, he was also selling his own track record. If he was a guy who could build things and go, well, look, yeah, look, I know you're kind of taking a punt on me, but look what I've built. Look what I can do. All right. Yeah, the football club's not gone so well in the last few years. It happens, COVID, blah, blah, blah. But look, at least I can get stuff done, right? No, he couldn't even see, he didn't have that on the table. So once everything got simpler, I calmed down a bit, and I'm pretty relaxed actually about what I'm hearing at the moment.
Okay. So in terms of the consortium, the makeup of the consortium, so the consortium model, as you've said, is not that unusual.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What teams similar to Southend, people looking to buy them, that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual people involved, the makeup of the consortium, obviously we know Justin's heading it up, and then there's a number of Southend business people involved, which on the face of it seems very positive. Do you have any thoughts on the consortium itself, the makeup of the people involved? And we're hearing as well this week that they're still considering kind of adding to it. There's a George Taylor, Teddy Taylor's son's name's been floated again, which might set the people's nerves on edge a little bit with it being so late in the day that they're still considering adding to it. But from what you've said, go with it. Relax.
Don't panic.
And don't panic. Yeah. So in terms of the consortium itself, what are your
so I'll start general and we'll go specific like last time. Like the syndicate approach is becoming pretty normal. So this year, Charlton were basically bought by a sort of local / American syndicate with kind of guys on the ground having some skin in the game. Not so much, but the real money coming from the States, and it's actually not even being one guy, being like 3 or 4 billionaires, two that we sort of are quite happy to be public, and some others who are very much sitting in the background.
Yeah.
Fenway Sports Group is another really good example of this approach. And to sort of say late in the day, people come in and out of that group.
Yeah.
All right. So that again is something quite common. Birmingham City, another recent example where there are. There's sort of a main person who's driving it, what they call a managing partner. Then there are limited partners who sort of sit in the background. And I don't think we're quite there yet with Southend, but it was part of a previous idea where sometimes you throw some shares to some celebrities, some famous people, to create a bit of sizzle, right? A bit of, razzmatazz. They might bring something to the table in terms of their social media following. So, Burnley, there's an example there. We saw it at Leeds United, the Leeds United group, right? It's a fascinating example. The 49ers, it's sort of the investment arm of the NFL team, are kind of driving the process, but there are half a dozen other guys who have got big money people who've got just as much money in as the NFL people. And then they've also distributed, they've sort of created this sort of team of golfers, basketball players, who've bought in. Well, they haven't really bought in. I think some of them have actually just been given shares, and it's created a conversation, and it's very much around sort of driving Leeds United's brand, particularly in the US. And I think it will probably be quite a good idea. Southend, we're not quite there yet, but who knows, right? So this is not uncommon, right? To have a load of people, and I quite like the idea of it being local people. Because let's be honest. Where are we on this journey? We're not Leeds United. We're not Liverpool. So it should be people that genuinely understand the club, understand the community, the region, and are accountable. Right? They are accountable. So many problems that come with football ownership are absentee landlords. People who aren't accountable. So the Glazers being perhaps an extreme example. But crucially, don't get it. They don't properly get it. They don't understand the connection between club and community. They don't really understand like just really obvious stuff like, how much can we charge these people? I don't really know. I haven't got a feel for it. What do they want? Do they want a beer in the ground, or are they quite happy with the pubs outside? What sort of food and bev do they want? Do they buy programs? I don't know. What should we put in the club shop? So many simple things are solved by local people. They really are. Yeah. So I quite like that bit of it. I think the group, I suppose the most interesting thing about the group is Justin. Right, his whole story. Why Southend? Why now? Frankly, are you rich enough? Which I think sounds like a rude and not very British question. But he's chosen to buy a football club. He's chosen to buy a cherished community asset. So that question is reasonable, particularly what the fans of that club have been through. So, I don't think we've got a hard and fast answer there. That's fine, and I think there's enough there for us to at least give him a chance. And I'm, certainly not going to be pestering him for his bank account details, but I think it is a reasonable question, and he will have to answer those questions, and he has presumably answered those questions to Ron Martin's people, to the rest of his consortium partners, to the Football Association, and if we go up, certainly to the EFL. So that's fine. Other people in the group, there's a couple names that gave me quite a bit of comfort. So I don't have the details in front of me. Is it Jason Brown? Jason Brown's
the hedge fund guy. Yeah, Jason Brown runs a hedge fund. I think he owns it
in Hong Kong. Yeah. So he's the wealthiest guy. Mm-hmm. I think there's another guy, Tom Arnold, who looks like he's got sort of a good job, good decent CV. He's a London-based finance guy, but Brown runs quite an exciting hedge fund that is based on Chinese property. So that's an interesting area.
There's a bit of a story brewing there, isn't there?
Well, he's made a big punt on Chinese property bouncing back. Right. So if he wins that bet, he's going to be absolutely loaded. If he loses that, he's not. But look, he runs a big hedge fund, so that's fine. Now the guy that's had the most, he's had a little bit of attention in the last week is a name that I've been aware of for a while. Teddy Taylor's son George, and I don't know how much people will know about the Athletic. So the other guys in the consortium aren't really an Athletic story.
Yeah.
George Taylor is an Athletic story, because he is the main shareholder at Rangers. And I can give you a little mini exclusive if you like, or a scoop. So George frankly has denied this up until now.
Sorry, he's denied that he's involved in the consortium.
Yeah. Up until I think this week. And I think there are a few reasons for that. One, Rangers is a very complicated and political club. And the ownership group there has been through some flux. He became the most prominent person there about a year ago. Two, Scottish football has quite strict rules on multi-club ownership. So I'm probably getting a bit too technical here, but Scotland has not done, if you like, what Belgium, the Netherlands, France have done, where they've been quite open about investors having stakes in more than one club in more than one place.
Sure.
Scotland's got quite a strict rule on that. Now, they're about to relax that rule. And actually, there's even some doubt whether it was ever really a rule or just a guideline. So there's some doubts around that. So he had some Scottish FA issues to sort out. Now, well done, Chris Phillips for getting the name out. And I think that has forced George Taylor to sort of admit, yes, all right, look, I am involved. I am interested. I've known he's been interested for a few months. And one of the initial sort of ways I was fobbed off is, no, it's not me. I've helped put Justin in contact with Jason, because George is based in Hong Kong as well. Hong Kong or Singapore, I can't remember. That's where he's made his money. He's a very successful finance guy in the Far East. And that kind of made some sense, although I sort of knew that it wasn't quite true, that he was actually involved. Now, the bit that we don't know, and it might not even really matter, is to the extent that he's involved. It could be a very, very small contribution. I think there might be still some sort of things to sort out with Rangers and Scottish FA, but that's it. So, a few weeks ago, let's say a month or so ago, he denied it.
Yeah.
He's now admitting Chris's story.
Yeah.
So that's fine. All right. I don't think we need to panic about this. I really don't. It's good. I would say this is
like
good.
Another money man, potentially.
Another money man.
Yeah. And he's got ties as well. Ties to the area. Yeah.
I think he went to school there. Yeah. We know all about his father and his father's love for the club and the city. So great. And I would say the third thing, he runs a massive football club.
Yeah.
That sounds like a win to me.
Yeah. So as long as he can get over the issues with the
and he doesn't need to run Southend.
No.
I think that's the thing that's probably what he's most concerned about. He's probably most concerned about people like me or the Scottish media. Anything that happens at Rangers is back page of the Post and the Record and all those, Scottish Sun, etc., etc. Him giving a clue that he's not 100% focused on Rangers, a hint,
right,
would be a story up there.
Sure.
So that's, I think, what he's sensitive about.
Brilliant. Okay.
We shouldn't be sensitive about it.
Another question the fans have is around the debt equity swap, I believe the term is. So there's obviously been this delay. Originally, we were looking at the 1st of November. We've now got this extraordinary general meeting on the 17th, whereby some of the shares are going to be converted into debt, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think there's a concern here again, and this does come back again down to the sort of history of Ron and the club, that, maybe this is a moving of the goalposts or something untoward is happening. And I think there's a feeling that perhaps when they've been asked, members of the consortium have said, oh, this is Ron that needs this doing. And when Ron's been asked, he said, oh, no, it's the consortium that need this. So there's kind of mixed messages coming through.
Yeah.
With your experience and your knowledge of this type of stuff, what are your thoughts on this delay and this mechanism really to dilute the shares?
Yeah, it's only because it's Ron that we're worried.
Right.
This is like, honestly, this is really standard.
Right.
Loads of clubs are funded by these soft director loans. And then what tends to happen is, particularly on the way out, they just convert them to equity. So, if you're under financial fair play rules, you're limited as to how much equity you can put in. So that's often why the soft loans go in. But then if there's a change of control, you always want this stuff tidied up. God, loads of clubs do this. I sort of follow pretty much every EFL club at Company's House and I get alerts
right
twice a week.
Yeah.
That recently. So this is one of the issues at Everton, right? So Mashiri's been pumping in soft loans there for ages. It's one of the issues actually in their argument with the Premier League, how those loans should have been treated. Should they have borne interest? Was there a tax implication? Blah blah blah. It can get complicated. It can. I just think with Ron, as I said, this weird tangled web and loads and loads of cross guarantees, the amount of money he's borrowed, lots of intra-company debt that only he probably really understands or his accountants really understand. It just needs to be tidied up on the way out. And if I was buying this thing, I would absolutely want all of this sorted out. So I think they're both right when they say he's asking for it, I'm asking for it. Ron wants every penny that he can get out of this. And he doesn't want sort of like liabilities hanging over him either. And I'm sure his children don't, because they've got to sort of carry on and build this stuff. And equally, anyone walking into this, well, hold on, I just want to absolutely make sure that by buying Southend United and there are other sort of subsidiaries they're buying, I'm not on the hook for some money that you've borrowed 15 years ago.
Sure.
Right. So I want that sorted. I don't want, I don't want to owe you any money. I don't want my company to owe your company any money whatsoever. So I want all those loans sorted out. Yeah, convert them all to equity. That's great. Everyone gets diluted a little bit, but that's fine. No one's going to argue with that. because we're buying the lot. Well, we're buying your shares first, but we're taking it. We're buying control. So this is sort of legal niceties that are only concerning because Southend fans are just there's no trust.
One last question from me. I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out, and we've talked over the deal, your opinions of it. As a Southend fan and an expert on football finance and crisis clubs, how do you see the next 12 months playing out? Where do you think Southend will be in a year's time?
Oh, look, I think we're going to be under new ownership. I'm confident, happy, encouraged about that. It's almost to the point where anything is better than Ron. I mean, look, I don't literally mean that, but I genuinely think these guys are going to be better than Ron. I think they're going to find it interesting and difficult and challenging. But I like the different expertise in the group. I think they might have to bring some more people in as we get further down the road, particularly around the stadium. They need more money, more expertise. All fine, all good. I think the 10-point penalty, where we're going to be, such a hard division to get out of. I think we're likely still to be in the National League next year.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think this time next year, we're more in a position that Chesterfield or Barnet or someone like that is in, right? Genuinely going for automatic.
Yeah.
The other thing to say is, I'm not quite sure how soon, but there is a very, very real live conversation about 3 up, 3 down, which will help us.
Yeah.
So that's good. I think this is the beginning of something much, much better.
Yeah.
Right. We're close, and we can be a sustainable, sensible, well-run football club again. And because of our size and our history, we will then, once we run competently, always be among the favourites to get out of the National League.
Yeah. Because
we are. Chesterfield fans might have an argument about this. Oldham fans might have an argument about this. I think we're the biggest club in the National League.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And
our footprint is fantastic where we are in terms of talent. Essex, that proximity to London, whilst it can be a problem in terms of persuading people to support us, if their fathers and etc. didn't do it, and how close better football is. My God, we have some amazing talent on our doorstep. So the southeast of England, Essex is a talent hotspot. So we should be able, and just through all the nonsense, we've continued to produce footballers.
Yeah. Well, the play. I mean, I'm like I said earlier, I'm a Derby fan, and I've started going to Southend, and the football they play.
We're playing nicer football than Paul Warren at Derby.
Oh yeah, 100%. The football is brilliant. The possession based, 1 touch, 2 touch. Some of the talent in the team, I think, these guys could be playing at least a couple of divisions above.
And it's one of the things I'm most annoyed about Ron. And like, again, it's a symptom of bad ownership. Our academy has continued to produce players, but because we've been a shambles, we've not been able to keep them, and we've lost them for nothing. Well, a well-run club gets to choose when to let its players go and gets to negotiate from a position of strength. Okay, yeah, bigger club. Yeah, you can have the player for 200 grand, but we want a sell-on clause. We're going to dig our heels in there, and we'll want some upside. And this is where proper clubs ownership makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that we get that in the not too distant future. Massive thank you, Matt, on behalf of myself and everyone on the podcast, and indeed the listeners. I'm sure they found that really insightful. Thanks very much for your time.
No problem at all.
Cheers. Big thanks to Matt Slater there from The Athletic for joining us and giving us his time and his expertise there to talk through his thoughts on the takeover. Now we move away from all that boring financial stuff and we get back to what we're really interested in, which is football. I'm here with Paul, and we are going into another round of
Paul's previews.
Paul's previews. I'm glad you said the line yourself there. It has more resonance with that Mockney accent.
It does, doesn't it? It needs a better jingle though.
It does. The jingle's forthcoming. We've booked out some studio time, and Paul's going to be on it. Paul, Altrincham away.
Yep.
This Saturday. What have you got for us?
Well, what a time to be playing them because, they've dropped points in their last two where they drew them. Their home record, in the last 5 home games, they've only won 2, drawn 2, lost 1, scored 11, conceded 6. So, they can score, but they do concede. However, one of those home games, it was an absolute thumper for them. They beat Ebbsfleet 6-1.
Oof.
Yeah, so if we just take that away, they don't really score many at home. They are the draw specialists. If we look at the draw table, I think they're joint top with Borehamwood and Oldham. Drawing 8 games in the league this season.
That's a lot.
That is quite a bit. And considering our form on the road at the moment, we've only won 1 game, but we've drawn 3, losing 1. So if you're a betting man, you might want to put a few quid on the draw here. And considering the goals that have been scored and conceded, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game again. Wouldn't surprise me if this is a bore score or maybe even 1-1. But, we've had that break. The players might be a little bit more refreshed coming back, a bit between their teeth, back on the road. If we can keep their danger man, Clarke, quiet, we might sneak a win here.
So who's Connor Clarke?
Well, he's quite impressive.
Clarke,
yeah. He's a young lad from Burnley that they've signed, and he's only 21, chalked up over 60 league appearances already. Oof. He's a goal-scoring midfielder. And this season, 17 games, and he's hit 8.
Wow.
And he's only 21. So he's going to be full of energy. And, young players seem to raise their game against Southend. So if we can keep him quiet, I think we'll be in with a shout here. And we need Carnu and Cards up top doing what they do best. And then, fingers crossed for a positive result.
Yeah, good stuff. Usually look at any ex-Southend players, anyone on their books that used to play for Southend?
Coming back from Egypt, I haven't had a chance to look. But something that did make me laugh is that the manager's called Phil Parkinson. But he ain't the one we think he is.
The other Phil Parkinson?
The other Phil Parkinson,
right.
Yes. Not the Wrexham-bound Phil Parkinson. The one at Wrexham, sorry.
It must be awful being the second Phil Parkinson in football management.
And without the good Phil Parkinson's record as well.
Yeah, and the world fame and the incredible salary that he's coining in from Hollywood.
Just a bit.
Poor Paul Parkinson II.
There we are.
Him. All right, good stuff, Paul. And we'll have a review of the game. And good luck to the Shrimpers.
Absolutely.
So there we have it, another action-packed episode of Shrimperscast in the bag. Massive thanks to Matt Slater of The Athletic, and a big thank you to Paul for joining me today. And last but not least, huge thank you to all of you guys out there listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe, leave a comment or a review, and make sure you share the podcast with your Southend supporting mates. And don't forget, our t-shirts are available to buy, shop.shrimperscast.com. 10% of all sales will be donated to the Shrimpers Trust. Have a great week, guys. We'll see you next week. Up the Blues.